Howdy, folks. Welcome to Gospel News Network. My name is Rory, and I am joined today by my good friend, longtime fellow comrade in arms, Mr. CJ. You know him as producer CJ from Rogue News, and now he's got his own thing going on. It is OMC Live. Is that right?
Yes. CJOMC, Open Mic Cast. Yep.
Open Mic Cast. And that's on YouTube. I've been on there a couple of times, and I wanted to have CJ on today. And what we're going to be talking about is our chaotic world that we find ourselves in, you know, war, rumors of war, end times type of thing. And we're going to look at some of these situations through more of a faith-based lens. That's the idea. And this is the first time that I've done anything like this, so it may stray away from the faith aspect of it because it's new. So not that I'm ignorant or that CJ is ignorant. We've never done it before, so It's brand new. And just on a side note, I am going to start doing more videos again. CJ's offered to help me get a live stream going. So we're going to start going to be like the cool kids like CJ and start doing some live stuff. So CJ, welcome. And I certainly appreciate you taking time out there, brother.
Absolutely, Rory. It's always a lot of fun anytime that we get to jump online and have a conversation, chat. I've followed your work for numerous years. A few years ago, we became friends, acquaintances. Always think about the journey that both of us have been on. And for that reason, I think through Christ, we've always kind of kept that personal connection in our friendship and our bond.
It is the blood that connects us. That is absolutely, I believe that 100% in my heart. And war and rumors of war. We have plenty of that going on right now. And we have the very unstable people that are in Washington, D.C. And we have the Nazis that are running around in Ukraine, and Putin, who has vowed to eliminate the Nazis that are in Ukraine. He doesn't like them. He doesn't like the bioweapons labs that are there. Can't say that I blame him. And he doesn't want the United States, by proxy of NATO, to encroach upon his border anymore. I personally see what's going on there, because of the different elements with the Nazis in particular, and the fact that Russia and the steppes where they are from, that particular landmass, all of that is very biblical. And I see this as being part of what's going on with what John of Patmos was describing in the book of Revelation. I mean, I think that we're seeing some of that unfold. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, Rory, I think the times that we're living in particular, the frequency of the anxiety, the geopolitical events that have unfolded the last several years, and based upon those, I think that we are entering a very interesting time as it relates to the approach of potentially the return that we learn about in the gospel of the book. One of the things I would like to start with is just imploring everyone, all your listeners. I haven't done this yet on the platforms that I participated in, but I think that Roy, there's so many people right now that are going through this in terms of the fear, the anxiety, the stress, financially. We just cycled through COVID, and a lot of people are still figuring out a lot of things in the direction of their life and going. And I just encourage everyone to really take some time and to get your house in order in terms of your relationships with God. I think it's just that important, the times that we're living in, to understanding is that as long as you have that, individual relationship, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through a church. It can be on an individual basis. Whether praying as a family, reading the Bible together, what have you. I think that can help in terms of some of that stress and anxiety. Personally, I was on a spiritual journey the past, I would say, probably 18 months to 2 years. A lot of those things that came about that, Rory, because I was so plugged into constant news cycle, right? The constant cycle that we're fed, and the negativity and those things that were occurring. And as a family, it's been very challenging, not just myself, but my siblings, to take a look at the course of the loss that we've experienced as a family. Several years ago, we lost a 15-year-old niece to a tragic automobile accident. Lost a sister to lung cancer. A few years, after that, cycled through, 3 deaths within the past 2 years of a father-in-law. Lost another 19-year-old nephew in an automobile accident. And then my sister lost her husband and he was a young age, probably 50, 55, 56. So many of those things have kind of have led to doing some soul searching, Rory, as far as an individual basis. And I think the Lord works in very mysterious ways. I had to do a lot of soul searching, a lot of praying to try to understand those. And that started with me, Rory, as an individual, taking a look at how my relationship with what was with God, and how, as an individual, how important that is in order for me to help others, to help my family, to help better understand that. And the Lord pointed me in the right direction and said, "Hey, take it yourself as an individual, and are you mentally, are you ready for this battle that we're going to be cycling through?" So I started out mentally getting back in the gym, getting myself in shape, taking a look and spending some time evaluating myself and where we were as a family. That led to my oldest son, who struggled a little bit with religion and God, even at the point, Rory, where when we lost my nephew, he really struggled to say, "Why would God do this? How does this make sense?" And it really questioned him, his faith in the Lord. And I told him, this was 3 years ago. I told my son, I'm like, "Listen, that's okay, son. Take your time, through it. I want you to understand things, but things will happen and come around." Well, Rory, I'm very happy to share with you that he went off to college. He joined a navigators group,
Nice.
a Christian-based, group. And for the last several months, my son and I, and we've been attending a church together as father and son, and we were able to bring my mother-in-law at one time, which she's so again, just little by little. And why I share that, I think, is a precursor to our conversation, is because I think it's emphatic right now for the potential trial and tribulations that are going to occur. We don't know, none of us know exactly what that potentially may look like. But I think that encouraging everyone individually to prepare yourself and your household for that, not only physical, in terms of your physical sense, your physical health. I say this numerous times: the best wealth that you can give yourself is your health, right? And
Yes.
it doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be crazy. It can be just, maybe it starts with a little bit of diet, like focusing on what you're eating and reducing your sugars and things like that. And then transversing that into maybe I need to get, do a little bit of walking, things like that. I think that helps in the mental health aspect. And then taking a look at your family as a whole in terms of your beliefs, your belief in God. And I know this conversation isn't for everyone. I get listeners to say, "Well, I guess I'm out because I don't." Well, that's up to you as an individual, right? We can't
Thank
force
you.
people. We can't force people to leave. All we can do is encourage people. This is the life that I've chosen to leave. I don't
Right.
want to put myself on this high pedestal. I've made numerous mistakes. I've sinned throughout my life several times. So I don't want to put myself out there that I'm holier than thou, because I'm not. Okay. But what I'm saying is, I think the times that
You
we're
and I both have probably sinned today, so it's okay.
yeah.
You probably will again before the end of the day is over. So
Right.
go
Right.
ahead.
So why I think that's important is because regardless of what happens, right? Regardless of what happens, as long as you have your belief in God, your faith, and you continue to pray, you have that strength, you have that around you to help protect yourself, protect your family, regardless of this outcome that's happening. And maybe the frequency that we're constantly fed, the amount of negativity in our news cycle, the information, perhaps that's by design, Rory, that keeps us away from thinking about certain things and keeps us at a perpetual state of anxiety and fear that we struggle with some of those things. So I think it's just important for all your listeners, no matter where they are, to consider what I just said, and evaluate it. And I hope that it resonates with some of your listeners.
Well, I'm sure that it will, and it certainly resonates with me. And you said you touched on several issues, or not issues, but you there were several things that you said that were, I'm just over here just popping in my mind. It's like, okay, I want to start with your son, and the question that he was asking 3 years ago when you lost a family member, and he's asking God, why would you do this? Okay. The first thing that we have to understand is that you, CJ, whoever you report to, if you report to an authority type, in your life, if you've got a boss or whoever it is that you report to, you would never go to them. They wouldn't give you an order, and you go, well, why would you do that? Why would you have me do that? You would never do that. But because that would be challenging them in a way that is uncomfortable for everybody. The air gets real thick, everything gets out of balance. So, and God looks at it the same way. And a better question would be to ask God, what do you want me to know?
Yeah.
What do you want me to know about the passing of my family member? What am I to learn from this, Father? Father, how would you have me to help my family to heal? Father, how would you deal with this? How would you deal with how did you deal with the passing of your son? What do I need to do in order to find the beauty of God within this situation? These are much different questions.
Yes.
And God is much more receptive to that. And when we put those types of questions before God, he's like, wow, now we got something. Now we've got something that I can work with that. When we go in prayer, and you also said something about people going to church or being on their own. Well, Jesus said himself, where two or three, he doesn't say two or more. He says two or three. What two or three are gathered in my name, I am there in their midst. That's what he said. I believe that. I believe that by you and I invoking the name of Jesus Christ right now, that he is now in this conversation. He's there with you. He's here with me. And he is with our audience as well. And wherever two or three are gathered in his name, he is there. I believe that. I live by that. Yeah. And I think that is part of the issue, that if you read the Bible on a regular basis, you'll notice there's a couple of phrases that are used when Jesus is speaking to people. And if it's more than one of the disciples or the apostles that he identifies by name, it's Peter or Andrew or John or James or Timothy or whoever it is that he's speaking to. And if he's speaking to two or three of them, then he identifies each one by name. That's a key. That's a clue. Okay. And then there's another phrase that is used like at the Sermon on the Mount. And it starts out, the disciples are there and the great multitude. That's the way they're described, the great multitude. They don't have an identity. It's just all these people.
Right.
They're just there. It's like showing up. It's like the people that show up for a rock concert or a revival or the magic act at the comedy show or whatever it is. They're just people that are there for the show. That's why they're there.
Yep.
And that's why they have no identity. That's why they're identified as the great multitude or multiples of people or large mass or large gathering or whatever, whatever the phrasing is. But they have no identity.
Yeah.
And that's really important for people to understand, that it's the relationship that we have with Jesus Christ is one-on-one. That's it.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship that you have and the relationship that I have is completely different. They are not the same. Our relationship is with our Father and his Son, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit who lives in us. But our relationship to the Trinity God is completely different. Same love, same beauty, same everything, completely different relationship, 100% different.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Well said. Very well said, Rory. Very well said.
and that's one of the things that I learned not too long ago was, and I love this, and it changed everything about the way that I look at Jesus and religion and spirituality, and everything changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And I made mention of it just a moment ago when I said that we should look for the beauty of God. If we look for the beauty of God in every situation in our life, we will find it. It may take a while, but it's there.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
You know, just like with the worst day I thought was the worst day of my life. The last time I went to jail for DUI.
Oh gosh.
I'm 40 years old. I have no one to call except for my mother.
Mm.
Imagine that. You're 40 years
Wow.
old, you are completely destitute, you have nothing. You have no one to lean on except your mom. That's it. That's all I had. Get in the car with her, and the first thing out of her mouth is, I am so disappointed in you, and I will never do this again. And I have never, that was like branded onto me, onto my brain.
Yeah, that's powerful right there.
It's
Whenever mother,
huge.
father with disappointment. Yeah, it's hard to correct that. It sticks
Beat
with
me.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah, beat me.
beat me. Don't say you're disappointed.
That's long term.
That's forever, dude.
Yeah.
But I saw that as the worst day of my life. But guess what? It turned out to be the absolute best day of my life. It was the best day of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of God. That's the beauty of God working in that. So we can either
Yes.
see it as something that's really negative and awful, and oh, my mom's disappointed and I'm never going to get over that. Like you said, the frequency of the negativity.
Mm. Yeah.
Who's winning here?
Yeah. I mean, no, that's and I think in part, forwarding us to the amount of darkness that's in the world right now, with some of the things that we're that's unfolding, that we're witnessing, some of the constant information that we get in regards to exposing the loss that we've where we were as far as a Christian nation, that we've kind of lost our way through a lot of things. And I think that sometimes we have to get through the darkness in order to see the light. And I think what's the events unfolding, and in particular with Ukraine, is that one could label it like a battle between good and evil, with the things that were taking place. And there's definitely been some evil things occurring there in the Ukraine,
Yes.
that I think potentially is reasons to try to stop those things from happening, Rory. And it's very unfortunate for the people who live there in Ukraine, that they're susceptible, that they're literally being leveraged and utilized right now. They're being forced to remain in the Ukraine, not allowing to leave the country. We're seeing this unfold in lightning times. We're witnessing this unfold, and the events that take place are shifting the dynamics. The way that the way that these things are going to take place are exposing potentially some of the criminality. Like when the news broke in regards to I believe it was the 10 or 12 different research labs. We'll call them research labs just so that we can stay in good terms with everybody. The research labs, that exposes a very dark side of what happens, that they leverage that. And I think that, again, just exposing that criminality to the world, is saying, listen, like, would God want us doing those things? Would they want us developing, these massive type of potentially biological warfare weapons that could create harm, to humanity, no matter where you are in terms of the spectrum, like whether you're Afghani, or you're Russian, or you're Chinese, or whatever. There are certain things that you are as a Christian, and your beliefs, that do no harm to others, right? But here we actually have a government that's developing these programs, and they want to use it for the falsehood that, well, we want to create these things so we can develop potential vaccines, so that we learn more about those things, that they try to make themselves good. So I think that with the Lord is exposing a lot of these evil things in the world. I think he's exposing all these things for a reason, so that way we can, and that's just one aspect, I think, of the events unfolding, in the Ukraine. And I think we're going to see some more. I think there's going to be some other things occurring potentially, in terms of the criminality, the loss of God, and I'll pause it there, because I've said a lot. If you have any other follow-up questions, but kind of alluding to the next step, which is understanding of how a lot of the things that have taken place, the evil things that have taken place, have been because we've been leveraging so much of the U.S. dollar that funds a lot of criminal, activities. But I'll pause there, because I said that I want to give you an opportunity, in case any comments or anything like that.
You touched on one of the things that is right there at the end, when you mentioned the dollar, because the dollar is a key element. I have come to the belief that it's an instrument of the devil. It has to be. I mean, because of the way that it was born, the way that it came about, the way that the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Reserve Act, the IRS, all these things are deeply, deeply evil, period. You can cover it up or say whatever you want about it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that they are extremely and deeply evil, because they corrupted everything. Everything in the United States became corrupt on December 23rd, 1913, period.
Yes.
And
yes.
That is, and what you were talking about, the fall of the U.S. The fall of the U.S. has to happen, period. It has to. Ukraine, I think, is part of that because of what has been going on there. It's been like the Ukraine, what is being exposed, in my opinion, is that it's like this little playground that they've had, for the past 3 or 4 decades, where they can launder all this billions and billions and billions of dollars. They can do all these have all this corruption going
Child
on.
trafficking, the amount of child trafficking through Europe,
Yep.
through there. Yeah.
Everything. And it all centers on one thing, and that's the dollar. And what has Russia and China in particular been doing? What have they both announced to the world? That the de-dollarization, right?
Yeah, correct.
And they've already, okay, so if this deal goes through and it happens, and Saudi Arabia begins taking yuan for oil, that is going to, it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It very well could be. I mean, and if that happens, then the United States, you think we have inflation now? Remember those pictures of the Weimar marks in the wheelbarrow? Remember those pictures? Yeah, that's what we're going to see. What do you? Am I on track here?
Yeah, just to piggyback off that for a moment, to understand the greed and the corruption that's occurred, with the dollar. And you can identify that in numerous examples. One of which is Washington D.C. in itself, right? Of how they've
Yep.
been able to leverage the massive amount of debt for their own personal gain, the massive amount of wealth that's been accumulated almost to the top now, where we take a look at the top 1% of our society controls more wealth than all of the people combined, the top 1%. And there's nothing that's been established other than the corruption of how that's occurred. So that's number one. The second part of it is how they leverage the dollar for evil around the world, right? In terms of the illicit drug trade. We
Yes.
do it for power, for greed, for influence, where, listen, if you don't do this, we're gonna hold your reserves, we're gonna confiscate. More recently, Rory, which is just very troubling, and again, I think the Lord speaks to us in mysterious ways, is the fact that the United States confiscated nearly all of the reserves from the Afghanistan people. And already this year alone, in 2022, they've seen record amount of deaths of Ukrainian children because of malnourishment, because of the struggling, because we took their dollars, we took their currency, from them. So the evil things like that, God is not very forgiving
No.
about things like that. He's not very forgiving. So this has been exposed, and for us to leverage, and again, as we said, leverage the dollar, leverage the currency for that type of greed, that type of corruption. And Roy, I hope that someday, when the dollar does not, it may not necessarily go away, but when the system does change, that perhaps some of that greed, the corruption, the fraud, everything that's associated with it, potentially may come to an end as well.
Do you think that's possible at this point with the, well, let me rephrase that, because it can happen, it will happen. It just depends on how many lives are lost in order to
Right.
get to the
Well,
other side.
yeah. And I think at one time, I'm not a historian. I don't pretend to be at all. But I think if you look at the history of the United States, how the foundation that the Christians came here to seek out, to build something different, in terms of
Yes.
Christianity, the belief in God. That for a long time we were potentially, that beacon. We were that bright light that resonated. But somehow through the course of time, Rory, it's been corroded. It's been corrupted. And now you look at where we've landed at in terms of our society, where our society has drifted so far from God, whether it's
Yes.
the woke community, whether it's the transgender, whether it's the attempt to normalize pedophilia. All these things are very evil, are very dark, in a way that we've drifted pretty far away from the Lord. So I think, in essence, that very well that the trial and tribulations that are going to happen could happen here in the United States. And when we face that aspect of when the dollar does lose its reserve status, and this is all being exposed, I'm not friends, or I'm not sitting here and saying I'm promoting, China or Russia. I'm not I'm
Right.
not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that we're dealing with a couple of different dynamics of do we say that, Roy, do we allow the same people who have corrupted everything, utilizing the economic and the currency model that they developed, breaking away from Bretton Woods, going off the gold standard, primarily by the West, the IMF, the Federal Reserve, do we
World
allow
Bank.
the same people who corrupted the entire system, do we allow them to be the gatekeepers of the next system that they want to evolve to? Or do we pivot away to something completely different? How do we disrupt that? And I think that's what we're dealing with. So it has very little to do with Ukraine. It's very unfortunate what's happening with the people of Ukraine. It's terrible. But the bigger dynamics of it is for the future of mankind and the ability to control currencies and the way that currencies work around the globe.
If we would just simply go back to the Coinage Act of 1792, outlaw the Federal Reserve, outlaw the IRS, we could get back to a silver standard. We could get back to having gold as money. gold being money, silver being money, silver being the currency that we use. And Wall Street would still function. It would still be there. The banks would still function. They would still be there. They would be in their place. It would
Yeah.
be utilitarian.
Right.
They
Yeah.
would not be this behemoth that runs the world, that owns all the important land. Just like George Carlin said, they own all the important land. They own all the important businesses. They own all the politicians, all the judges. They own them all, every
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah. And you said something very important, and that's in terms of how we look at precious metals, gold, silver, and how potentially that could be very disruptive to the status quo in terms of
Yes.
the dollar hegemony. I think we very well could enter a period also where it's going to be important that maybe that there could be a potential a barter system. A lot of people don't understand the importance of holding, precious metals. Therefore, I don't have any statistics to take a look at in terms of saying, hey, across the board, this is how many Americans actually own precious metals. But I imagine, Roy, a good chunk of American people probably don't own precious metals, right? I mean, they're still
It's about 0.5% of all investors globally.
right, right. Oh wow, it's even less than I thought it was.
Tiny.
So we may very well enter a period where perhaps maybe bartering comes into play, maybe an
Absolutely.
exchange of goods for services. Hey, I don't know how to do this. I need somebody to come. I physically can't do my garden anymore, but if you come and help in my garden, then we can share the fruits of
bounty.
the labor, and we can share the harvest and things like that. Those are things that need to be taken into consideration right now, not to make it all doom and gloom, but I think if you don't start thinking of that perspective in terms of your communities and being involved, getting to know your neighbors, becoming friends with your neighbors, all those things are going to be so important as we navigate through this transition period that we're all going to be going through. So I think that in terms of the dollar and that perspective of that changing, and you mentioned also too is in terms of their accumulation of wealth, right? That their attempt to really not only the land grab but also the food supply as well.
Right.
Support your local farmers. Support, become friends with them, get to know who they are, what they do, because that'll just be very important through this dynamics that we're experiencing, that we're going through, Rory, because it's happening, I think, quicker than most people anticipated. One of the reasons why that's happening is because we're navigating through the boomerang effect. And the boomerang effect that I'm referring to is the fact that the United States, by instituting these very harsh sanctions against Russia, potentially confiscating some of Russia's reserves, all these things that the United States has done is giving other countries more reason to diversify even faster out of the dollar that probably wasn't necessarily going to happen. It was going to happen at some point, but now they're seeing the need to do that even quicker. And you alluded to it as well in regards to Saudi Arabia, that they are going to start direct oil trade and selling of oil to China, for example, in the yuan. It's probably already been happening for quite some time. It's probably already more than likely been happening, but now you actually have the Saudis who are saying, listen, we may be shifting from a petrodollar based system. And I've learned this from a lot of the people in our media type people that we know, Rory, that the biggest fear in regards to the Saudis, and I believe for a long time it was strictly due to the oil, that's why we stay aligned with the Saudis, because of oil. But the other fear that probably has a lot more to do with it, Rory, is the massive amount of wealth that the royal Saudis families has. That's a lot of it is in U.S. treasuries, is in dollar denominated type things. And if they start pulling away and shifting and getting away from those things, it could create some hurt for us. So I think all these things are interconnected, and how they approach and how we're navigating through this. And my fear is that if the U.S. doesn't change course pretty darn soon, that we're going to be pretty much isolated from the rest of the world. And are they going to want to do trade with us? Are they going to want to do those things? But maybe that's that darkness period that we're going to have to experience, Rory, to navigate through potentially biblical times. I'm hoping that war can be prevented. I think the Bible talks about the big battle that has to take place. I just, I pray. I pray for Biden. I pray for
Yes.
Putin. I pray for Zelensky. I want them to make good decisions. I pray that the Lord, gives them wisdoms, gives them proper guidance to avoid some type of huge escalation that's going to really impact mankind, all of humanity. Those are the things that we need to be praying for right now collectively, Rory, is that we can call peace. We can hit the reset button so that we can all understand. We get our leaders to understand that if we do well for humanity and we serve others the way that we're truly supposed to, all of mankind and humanity, we can all prosper. We can all navigate through this, but we can't have a selfish one top percent elitist class who think that they know better of all things, whether it's education, whether it's social programs. This 1% elite class that wants to mandate everything for the rest of society, Rory, that's simply not going to work.
It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. And the misgivings of the last 40, 50 or more years are now coming home to roost. All of the ill-gotten gains are starting to rot on the vine. They really are. And that's
Yeah.
what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. That's how it works. I mean, there's nothing that you and I can do about it. And they're desperate. I think that there's a certain amount of fear that they have. And um, they're I think that their last gasp is which is going to be their undoing, by the way, in my opinion, is the CBDC, the central bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Currency. Everybody, that barter system you talked about, gold and silver, all of these different mechanisms of trade and commerce and currency, all of these things are all going to suddenly blossom. Bitcoin, all the cryptocurrencies, they're all going to take the ones that, depending on how the Russian cyber attack on the power grid, depending on how that, or the sunspot, that's
Mm-hmm.
now is supposed to hit Earth today or tomorrow, sometime in the next 48 hours.
Yeah.
Depending on how that, because Bitcoin and all of the cryptocurrencies, they don't work. But if those don't work, then how is a central bank digital currency going to work? So it's not. So, I mean, so we have issues that, like I said, if they roll that out, take our cash, that's going to be, in my opinion, that's going to boomerang, like what you were talking
Yeah.
about, Russia.
Right. Yeah. And many, we talk a lot around, the mark of the beast, right? Of what that refers to, what that potentially looks like.
Yep.
A lot of conversations in regards to the, digital currencies, different, digital platforms, digital passports that interconnect everything, right? Interconnect
Yep.
your wallets. I mean, the technology basically is there to establish, those things currently. I think a lot of the lockdowns and the restrictions taught the controllers a lot about us as humanity, that we're compliant to a certain degree, but you push us too far and humanity will rise, right? And humanity will continuously do that time and time again. I put my trust and faith in God, and also in mankind, not the controllers, not these people that want to try to navigate and try to have a better they want us to have a less understanding of the events unfold, potentially suppressing information so that we're not aware of that. And that's why we see that continuous news information cycle, whether it's Hunter Biden's laptop or Kim Kardashian is doing this, and
Or
then
or Babylon B saying that man is not a woman.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. Great point. So I think all those things are events unfolding. I think the quickening, I think I said this here recently, I think that we've exited the eye of the hurricane. We were in the eye of a hurricane for a good 5 to 10 years. Everything was evolving around, but now we're exiting that. I have that hurricane. Now we're starting to go into that hurricane. Things are getting more spontaneous. Things are getting more frequent. So that's the kind of the cycle of how I'm kind of looking at those things. And so how difficult does it get? How challenging does it become? I think it's, and that's why I began our conversation with getting right with God, getting right with
Yes.
your family, understanding all those things, that regardless of how difficult it becomes, that if you have your faith, you have your prayer, that you try to fight through this and be optimistic about it, that humanity will prevail. It's not going to be easy. There's definitely going to be a struggle, but I think that if we recall from the Bible, there was a lot of struggle throughout the times of Jesus, his teachings, everything that he had to go through, and we have to understand those things. And that, and I know from being in the media like we are, one of the other things, and this was a great, I need to introduce you to the minister. The church I go to is a great person. He does a once a month Sunday service called Off the Wall, where he talks about biblical scripture, how it relates to current events and everything. He's a great guy. He really is.
Okay.
But he said that's one of our struggles as far as people, that we always want the answer to something, right? Like we're always searching for that answer. Like we want that answer. We want to know. It's like a movie. We want to know that conclusion and everything, but that's in God's. We're not supposed to know that. We're not. The difficulty is accepting that, Rory.
Yes.
That darn it, I want the answer. I want to know how this ends, and this, but we're not supposed to know that. Right? And you're laughing. I know you got a lot to say. Go ahead. Yeah.
And when it's going to end.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I mean, and a few minutes ago I said, great questions to ask God are, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? How did you, I work with guys in our community. They are struggling with addiction, and I counsel. I'm getting ready to go and meet with a couple of guys, and just when we end this call,
serving others. That's awesome. Love it.
And it's it's part of what it is getting into the community. We have to get into our community, like what you were saying. If we don't do that, we are lost. But I forgot.
No, it's okay. We were talking about serving others. You're getting ready to go, and I talked about knowing the answers to.
Knowing the answers. This is one of the questions that I ask, that I present to the guys, every one of them. How did Jesus know to pick Andrew and Simon? And how did he know that Simon's name was not Simon, but it was Peter? How do you know that?
Yeah.
How do you know that? I want to know how you know that. That question will not be answered today. That question will be answered in God's time and in the way that he wants to present that answer. It's not going to be, well, Rory, it's kind of like this. That's not going to happen. And that's what we want. We want A and B to equal C. And God doesn't work that way at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And people get frustrated. Well, I prayed for a long time, and nothing ever happened, and I didn't get, those things that I wanted, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, and what changed? Well, I stopped praying. Well, might have something to do with it.
Yeah. No. Amen. I completely agree. And I think conversations like this serve a lot of value right now, Rory. I think through this time more than ever, I see so many people that are hurting, so many people with stress, so many people with addiction.
Yes.
And if we can spread more news and to help others, I firmly believe that that's something that I lost sight of the last couple of years. Was I was so focused on what I was doing and so focused on, my family and what they were doing, which may have been the right thing to do at the time. But I think that we're at that point now where we're serving others and helping others is just so important for us. so that the Lord sees those things. He sees us
Yes.
following the word of the Bible,
Yes.
and truly understanding, not necessarily truly understanding the meaning, but we're living the life of good Christians, to help others and to benefit all of society versus individual needs, wants, and demands. Rory.
Glorifying him instead of ourselves, propping up his kingdom, seeking his kingdom first in all that we do. That is how we improve. That's how we, as humans in living in this world, I am in this world, I am not of this world, but that is how we, as humans living in this world, reflect him and give him the glory, is by seeking him first, seeking the kingdom of God first. Why do you think I'm going to serve these guys that are struggling with addiction? I mean, those are his children.
Absolutely.
Are they, this is one of the things that I talk to them about, because I get these guys right out of prison, right out of jail. I mean, they are raw, and some of them are very angry.
I bet.
And one of the things that I ask them is, and this is a great question. You can ask it to anybody, and it applies. And it's like, okay, have you ever in your mind, have you ever said, well, you ever heard the words, you're a loser, you're a terrible son, you're a terrible brother, you're a terrible sister, a terrible daughter, you're a terrible parent. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you moron, you idiot. All of these things. Do you think that God would ever call his child that? Does he see that when he looks at us? No, he doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Good
What
point.
about a drug addict? Oh, you drug addict. You're a loser. I used to say that all the time. How did this whole world, universe, everything come into existence? Do you remember the very beginning of the Bible, right out of the gate? What happened? What did God do to make all of this happen? It's not a rhetorical
Right.
question. What
Right.
did he do? Do you remember?
Yeah. Yeah.
Spoke it into existence.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
So if God is speaking things into existence, when we hear that in our mind, that I'm all of these things that I am not, that can only be coming from one source, and it is not God. Okay, so we have to tame that voice. We have
Yeah.
to rebuke those titles
Yeah.
and never give them credence, because that's what changes us.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm saying these words that are lies. What does God see when he looks at you, CJ? What does he see?
He sees a person that's attempting to. Well, he sees me. He sees me, the beauty in me. He sees me as a child, and he believes in me and he'll be there to support me regardless of what I do. But I need to individually be strive for those things to be a better Christian. But good, Ray.
Perfect, anointed, and holy. That's what he sees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect, anointed, and holy. Think about that. That's when God looks at us, and it's like we're down here in all of our mess. And all we see is, like you've said in a number of occasions, this darkness that is all around us. That's all that, when he looks at us, when he looks at CJ, when he looks at Rory, when he looks at everybody that's listening to this, that's what he sees. He sees his perfect, anointed, and holy child. We are his children. He belongs to us, and we belong to him.
Yeah.
Period.
Amen.
We have
Amen.
to own that. When we start owning that, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Very well said.
So we better wrap this up. Otherwise,
yeah, it was a lot of fun, Rory. I really enjoyed our conversation today. It's really enjoyed it.
Well, it was.
I can't believe an hour went by. It seemed like we've only been talking for 5 minutes.
It's incredible. And it's we're going to do this again. We're going to
absolutely.
Next time that we do it, my hope is that it will be live and we'll be able to get the interaction of the chats. So, but anyway, you can find CJ over at CJ's OMC live. What is it?
OMC Live. OMC
Okay.
Live.
There
Yeah,
you go.
CJ OMC. Yeah, so it's open mic cast
Open mic cast.
and
That's what
yeah,
I
open mic cast, and we're looking to kind of differentiate ourselves in terms of some of the content that we're media that we're doing to carry into our conversation today, and that's helping others. So it will evolve and get there to that point, and I'm hoping that that people will find it a source of information, and especially with a good complement to all the quality stuff that you're doing, Rory.
Well, I'm gonna start. Like I said, I'm cranking her back up. It's been a couple of years since I've done anything in earnest, and the time has come to.
Yeah, it is. It's time. Perfect
So
timing. Perfect timing
it's
for it.
we're back.
Yep, we're back.
Gospel News Network, Daily Coin is out the window, and I love it. It was great. It was beautiful. Time well served. But Gospel News Network is where my heart is, and it's where we're going to be. And CJ, we'll get you on the flip side, and we'll be looking for your next live broadcast at CJ OMC over on YouTube.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well.